There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 29, Mineral Resources Appropriation Bill.
I now invite the Honourable Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy to address the House. The Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources, we've stopped calling Honorable Hlongwa. We're calling Honorable Bavelile. Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, the whip, members of the committee, honorable members, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, although merged into one, will present two separate budgets. Today is the budget vote number 29 for mineral resources. Tomorrow we'll present the energy budget. 2 billion rand has been allocated to mineral resources for 2019-2020 financial year. Of that, 52% goes to entities of our portfolio, and this demands of the department to be more efficient, especially in these tough economic times. Very tight budget, lot of work. We must nonetheless give practical expression to and execution of the electoral mandate to grow South Africa. We must do so in line with the 7 priorities outlined by the President in his State of the Nation address. Directed by the President's reconfiguration of government, we're working in earnest to merge mineral and energy departments. Mining and energy are critical to economic growth and development. Merging the departments assess their mutual reinforcing nature and thus enable streamlining of processes, integration of value chain from upstream to downstream, and ensure alignment of policy and regulatory framework for stability and investment. Reconfiguration should result in a department that is adequately capacitated, that is efficient, and that is responsive to the needs of the people. Now, we recognize that the budget vote occurs in a dire economic climate nationally and internationally. The economy contracted by 3.2% in the first quarter of 2019. We should always use that as a point of reference because our contribution to the overall performance of the economy is quite critical. Mining declined by 10.8%, contributing 0.8% to the overall 3.2% decline. Load shedding, electricity pricing, and the 5-month-long strike in the coal sector account for the decline in the main. Therefore, a reliable, secure supply of energy for growth of the sector is critical. Honorable members, South Africans we met in our election campaign called on us to invest in job creation. Employment figures for the first quarter in 2019 are a positive sign. Of the 22,000 jobs created, 6,000 are in mining. We are talking to the industry to sustain and grow these positive indications. The non-ferrous metal sector also shows signs of growth in the first quarter. Mining is a sunrise industry. I believe that, and I confirm that I believe that mining is a sunrise industry. We must prospect, we must explore, and we must exploit the world-class mineral deposits we have. will resuscitate greenfield exploration to capture a minimum of 5% of global exploration share, which average of 10 billion US dollars per annum. The investment will attract a minimum of 8 billion rand into the exploration sector. To this end, the state has deliberately decided to invest in the geoscience mapping program through the Council for Geoscience. At this point in time, though we aim to get 5% of the global budget, we are now only attracting about 1% of that budget. But in terms of the deposit we're having, there's nothing that stops us from attracting 5% of that budget. Long-term sustainability and stability of mining depends on coexistence with others. That is, we must coexist with agriculture, we must coexist with the environment, we must coexist with tourism, and we must coexist with mining communities. Mining companies must therefore prioritize and be proactive in engaging with these stakeholders. This coexistence is affirmed by the recent court judgments on regulation of mining and exploration rights, which emphasize meaningful consultation with communities and lawful occupiers of land, also cooperative governance between organs of the state. That is one responsibility we are accepting unreservedly. We'll work with everybody to make mining sustainable, and we'll share information with everybody who is relevant to mining. The department's councils of science, together with private and other public entities, are developing local resources of phosphates, a primary feedstock to manufacture fertilizers. The Fontaine phosphate deposit on the Cape West Coast will significantly improve South Africa's self-sufficiency in fertilizer feedstock once fully operational. So we're paying our attention to the development of that deposit. Global demand for alternative sources of energy, in particular clean energy, present new opportunities for minerals such as lithium, vanadium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, carbon, copper, and rare earth elements, which support this trend. Hence, the investigation into these minerals that contain elements of clean energy technology. We have progressed with the geo-environmental baseline study in Beaufort West, with the impending drilling of a stratigraphic borehole to ascertain the makeup of Karoo formations. This will inform the appropriate monitoring and evaluation regulation for the development of the shale gas prospects inherent in the Karoo. This initiative constitutes our effort to create seamless transition to low carbon energy generation. This point is very important because the recent judgment prohibiting us from fracturing is interpreted wrongly as saying there must nothing happen. We can access that gas if we use other methodologies other than fracturing. And that is what we are going to be focusing on. The Molteno coal fields, spanning from the south part of Free State and the large part of the Eastern Cape, are being evaluated for their sustainability for energy generation. Early indication are that coal fields could be utilized as thermal coal for electricity generation. A program for carbon capture and storage to ensure continued use of our coal resources in an environmentally sustainable manner is underway. So CGS and SANEDI are working together on this project. It is at the pilot stage now. The policy and regulatory framework are stable and predictable. Our principal act, the MPRDA, as well as Section 11 thereof, are clear on requirements for current and potential investors, together with stakeholders who are developing a growth and competitiveness strategy, conscious that growth, transformation, competitiveness, and sustainability are all critical for the long-term sustainability of the mining sector. And therefore, it is not transformation or, it is both competitiveness, efficiency, and transformation together, will sustain the mining industry in the long term. Now, significant investment totaling to 45 billion and creating an estimated of 4,000 permanent jobs poured into the sector in the past years. Among them, 21.8 billion Vedanta resources in the Northern Cape, Sasol 14 billion rand in mine replacement program at Shandoni and Mpumalanga in Mpumalanga, Exaro's 3.3 billion rand in mine investment in Belfast, Mpumalanga. These are an endorsement of South Africa being an attractive destination of the mining investment. This is demystifying the distorted concept of old money. When we invest on existing mines, people call it old money. Money is not old until it reaches the industry. Once it reaches the industry, it is new investment. It may be directed at greenfield investment, can be directed at other forms of investment, extending lives of the mines. So these investments are appreciated. Over 2018 to 2020, 12 of 60 mineral resources projects are in the pipeline, with an investment estimated at 110 billion rand and a projected employment of 32,000 jobs. These are projects in exploration, they are in expansion, they are in new mines, they are in processing plants. We recognize the growth of junior miners who are significant players in exploration. Now, to meet this initiative and demands, we have set aside 20 million rand in the current financial year to improve and develop an integrated licensing system over the coming 2 years. We have made significant strides in processing the backlog in license application in our Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and Northwest regions, and these offices have now been reopened. Turnaround times to process license application are under review. Time frame might be short without having an effect on major legislative amendments by adopting a more effective and efficient internal process. This will ensure that we are more responsive to the needs and requirements of our applicants. There is relative stability in the mining sector as a result of collective effort by government, business, and labor. We are emphasizing this point because it is not government or business or labor. It is working together as stakeholders in the sector. And then the sector is going to be stable if stakeholders in that sector work together. As we approach wage negotiation in the platinum sector, our appeal is that all stakeholders must engage in good faith in the interest of the employees, the sector, and the economy at large. Our manifesto enjoins us to transform the economy, to serve all the people through interventions that promote developmental growth paths. Beneficiation has the capacity to grow the economy and create decent employment. We should use administered prices as an interventionist tool to grow the economy and support localization. Steps to address administered prices in electricity, port, and rail tariffs that hamper investment and growth are being considered. There is an attempt to attract beneficiation projects. We will work with other departments to achieve this objective. At this point in time, beneficiation remains a dream as long as the price of electricity is at the level it is. High electricity prices are inhibiting factor to beneficiation as a dream. Mintech is in the process of developing rare earth elements manufacturing industry. This will meet the global demand for rare earth elements used in the application of electric vehicles and wind turbine generators. Following the initial investment of 100 million rand, we're investing 150 million rand to revive the declining ferroalloy sector, mainly ferrochrome and ferromanganese, over the next 5 years. This work will be undertaken by Mintech. A significant portion of local ferroalloy smelters were mothballed over the years due to high electricity costs. And the ore is currently being exported. And our view is that if we use administered prices as a deliberate intervention, we can reverse that trend. Mintech has also developed a solution to acid mine drainage by removing its environmental impact and transforming it into usable water. The solution has passed industrial testing scale and is ready to full implementation. An investment of 120 million rand over the next 5 years will go into immediate development of high-value diagnostic products and manufacturing infrastructure to supply the products on the commercial scale as part of beneficiaries. These are point-of-care diagnostic test kits, for example, kits for HIV test, for malaria, for TB, for risk value fever, using nanoparticles of gold as an active ingredient. They are currently supplied to public health facilities in 5 provinces and outperform commercially available products in terms of shelf life. Their usage will reduce South Africa's reliance on import of diagnostic kits and utilize South Africa's gold. We're hoping that MINDEC will work together with Pelchem to commercialize these products. They're together now in the department, and they can actually double the production of these products if they work together. In this organ context, PGMs, that is platinum group metals, form a largest portion of untapped resources, conservatively valued at $2.5 trillion US. To take advantage of the country's abundant platinum resources, the Hydrogen SA flagship project was launched to beneficiate platinum through the use of hydrogen power fuel cells. The project aimed to achieve the local production of 25% of global demand for beneficiated platinum in fuel cells by 2020. The Global Boss Explosion Testing Facility, one of the few remaining in the world, is being transferred to Mine Health and Safety Council in the current year. The CSIR will continue to manage the facility in the interim until the transfer is completed. The facility will be upgraded to continue with research on the reduction of coal dust and methane explosion. We're investing in a seismic monitoring network to monitor seismic activities that could potentially affect the integrity of private business and critical infrastructure. On skills development, in response to the present priority of education, skills development and training, 800 million rand is allocated to fund, among others, bursaries, apprenticeship and internships in the field of geology, electrical, mechanical, mining, rock engineering, as well as artisanal training. The MQA, Mine Qualifications Authority, currently supports 1,700 bursars. In terms of health and safety, mining is about people. Mining is about people. It is about workers who translate investment into wealth. Therefore, health and safety of the employees is paramount. The total number of reported facilities this year stand at 21, lower than the 45 reported for the same period in 2018. This is 53% improvement year on year. Year is not over yet. The industry is unpredictable when it comes to these issues. But we're reporting progress. There is also an 11% improvement on mine injuries from 1,193 to 1,063 cases reported. We are collaborating with the Department of Health on a project to investigate the capacity and possibility of mine hospitals. Illegal mining, that is another project. Illegal mining is a criminal activity. Illegal mining is a criminal activity. You can put a different argument, it is a criminal activity. And we must decisively deal with the source of illicit mining and trafficking of minerals. South Africa and other member states tabled a draft resolution to the United Nations Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice during the 28th session held on 24 May 2019. The resolution is about combating transnational organized crime and its link to illicit trafficking of precious metal and illegal mining, including by enhancing the security of supply chains of precious metals. Member states were urged, in line with their respective domestic legal frameworks, to consider criminalizing illicit trafficking of precious metals. If you want to do that, you want to traffic precious metals, I can only wish you good luck. Now, we reaffirm that mining is a sunrise industry. It can contribute to the delivery of government priority, revive the economy, boost growth and development of the country. And I think I must thank the work of the team, the MRE, in preparation for this budget and general.
Honourable Minister, your time is now expired.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank my family for the support I'm getting. And
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
I want to express the support for the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Luzipo.
The Honorable Chairperson, the Honorable Minister, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, the Deputy Minister for Mineral Resources and Energy, the Portfolio Committee members, Honorable members, leadership of the trade union movement, bosses of the mining industry, the mining communities, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me extend a word of sorrow to the bereaved Konyeni family, as we have received the sad news that Mama Nomhlen Konyeni is no more. And we say, as the dark clouds has fallen over them, they must continue to remember the fond memories of a living legend in the artist industry. It is with great sense of appreciation to stand here in the debate about Vote 29, mineral resources. The debate would not have come at any most appropriate time if it was not at the month of July, where we celebrate the life and birth of our founding father for a democratic South Africa, the icon Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. This is the least told about his life, that at times we ponder as to why it is the case, and hopefully it is not because we look down upon mine workers' jobs. Nelson Mandela was a mine worker at some point, and mine workers should remain proud that he was one of their own, and that's where he sharpened his teeth in terms of the revolutionary discourse for a free South Africa. The Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy has considered the 2019-2022 annual performance plans as well as the budget for Vote 29. We must say that obviously we received mixed reactions in relation to the industry when we see the increase of other commodity prices, but at the same time we see a decline in other commodities within the industry. This development could signal a commodity supercycle, as we have seen amongst others that the price for coal in the past 3 years has become one of the key contributors in the economy of this country. It is the task of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to help South Africa to harness its mineral wealth for development. We recall that relations between, at some point, amongst others, is the review of the Mineral Regulation Resource Development Act. And I think it's important, Honorable Chairperson, just to provide clarity that when the
Honorable Luzipo, will
when-
you just take your seat, please? The honorable member that is now walking out, you are not allowed to cross the floor. You are supposed to make use of the passages that are there. Thank you. Continue, Honorable Luzipo.
resources and the industry. And we have seen an improved relationship post-January 2018. Sadly, though, approximately 75,000 mining jobs were lost between 2012 and June 2018, making the achievement of the growth goals set for the sector in the National Development Plan much more difficult. The committee, though, remains concerned about various reasons that we have highlighted in terms of the parliamentary process. Amongst others is the review of the Mineral Regulation Resource Development Act. And I think it's important, Honorable Chairperson, just to provide clarity that when
Honorable Luzipo, will
when-
you just take your seat, please? The honorable member that is now walking out, you are not allowed to cross the floor. You are supposed to make use of the passages that are there. Thank you. Continue, Honorable Luzipo.
Okay. Just to give clarity on the reasons for the return of the MPRDA amendment bill. This House will recall that in 2014, the MPRDA was passed in a rush, and the first minister in 2014, former Minister Ngwako Ramashodi, said he wishes that the president, the former president, does not sign that bill into law so that it can be returned, so that he can get an opportunity to draw a separation, that the traditional minerals remains as part of that, but develop a new legislation in relation to oil and gas. And therefore, there is nothing. When the bill was brought back, unfortunately, by the president then, it had 4 reasons why the president had withdrawn. They did not sign. One, it were substantive issues. The first one was the issue of the international trade agreement, where they said it couldn't pass the constitutional muster. They said to the NCOP. The NCOP then could not reconcile and agree. And it was almost at the tail end of the 5th Parliament. The minister made a recommendation to the president that he suggests the bill must be withdrawn so that it can be started afresh, and that's the reason that the bill was not passed. So that when we make our own political opportunistic statements, we should understand that the truth, it remains codes which was given to the minister. But 2 most important ones, which I think all of us should agree on, was the issue of public participation. The president at that time said there was not enough consultation in the National Council of Provinces, and therefore opportunity must be given to the National House of Provinces to deal with the matter. Secondly, in that regard on public participation, was the issue that there was no consultation with the National House of Traditional Leaders. Hence, he returned the bill. No other justification can be given. When that bill was referred to the NCOP then could not reconcile and agree. And it was almost at the tail end of the 5th Parliament. The minister made a recommendation to the president that he suggests the bill must be withdrawn so that it can be started afresh, and that's the reason that the bill was not passed. So that when we make our own political opportunistic statements, we should understand that the truth, it remains as a truth. And I know sometimes the truth is painful because those that have made themselves to be habitual liars, they are not prepared to take the truth. The most important issue that we therefore recommend is that the department must deal very effectively with the issue of illegal mining. That there are many aspects in illegal mining. Amongst those is to deal with the issue of the closure of mines. Because part of the attraction in the mining industry is an understanding that as long as there is commodity beneath the soil, then it will be difficult to avoid the question of illegal mining, including on other areas, access of communities in mining rights. Secondly, we say there must be clarity and timeframes on the beneficiation strategy. We say that there must be an alignment of bursaries by the department so that we can deal with the problem of scarce skills. We must be able to address the issue of occupational diseases that continues to befall our people even post-mining. We have requested that the department must present only a nation that remains a caring nation will then understand the problem of Lily Mine. We say there must be a comprehensive strategy on how to address the crisis of Lily Mine and consequences thereof. And therefore, Chairperson, we want to move and support Budget Vote 29 on the basis that it has got limitation. What we must make one reservation that it must be noted. We say it's going to be difficult when we look at how the budget is done. There has to be a deliberate focus of investing on the productive sectors of our economy so that we can be able to generate revenue to subsidize in the manner that in which budget at times is done. Our concern is that we seem to be cutting more on the productive sectors of our economy, which will have a ripple effect on how then do we move forward in addressing our social needs as a government. Thank you very much. We move and support Vote 29.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Milam.
Thank you. House Chair, South Africa, once the jewelry box of the world, now has a mining industry in terminal decline. It is dying not because the mineral resources are running out, but because of government ineptitude, poor policy choices, and militant trade unions. It is dying because investors no longer wish to put capital into a country where the word of the government is no good. Despite the current high prices of gold, palladium, rhodium, and other minerals, of which South Africa is one of the world's leading sources, we can no longer compete globally in terms of mining production. Despite the fact that we sit on the world's largest mineral reserves, valued at between $2.5 and $4.7 trillion, our costs of production have skyrocketed, primarily due to increased labor costs. We have had several consecutive quarters of mining production declines, and we have recently lost our position as the leading gold producer in Africa to Ghana, despite that country having much smaller gold reserves. And we have lost an estimated 75,000 jobs in the mining sector since 2012. All of which calls into question the Director General's statement during the APP's presentation to the Portfolio Committee. He said, and I quote, "We have achieved our vision of a globally competitive, sustainable, and meaningfully transformed mining and minerals sector." Globally competitive? Competitive against who? When the Mining Charter was first introduced in 2004, the ANC government assured mining companies that the BEE requirement of 26% shareholding would not be amended. That created certainty, as companies could invest and plan knowing the environment they were operating in. But that all went out the window with Mining Charter 3. Suddenly, the BEE shareholding requirement jumped to 30%, and there's absolutely no guarantee that it won't change again in the future, creating more uncertainty in an already uncertain sector of the economy. The new requirement that mining companies purchase 80% of their services from South African companies, 60% from BEE entrepreneurs, 10% from BEE women or youth-owned enterprises, and 10% from BEE-compliant companies. Likewise, at least 70% of all mining goods must be purchased from similar companies. Now, in certain instances, some of the BEE companies do not have the required products on hand, or they do not have the required skills, and they are forced to import them, which affects their bottom line, it affects the mining company's bottom line, and it affects turnaround times, and it does nothing to facilitate skills development in their workforce. The inflexibility of these regulations are basically throwing BEE companies under the bus. The impact of this cannot be underestimated. In June this year, Continental Tires announced that it was ceasing production of its underground mining tires and laying off 170 workers, a decision that has been attributed directly to the policy uncertainty surrounding the mining charter. And that's just one example. Last week, we heard that the Minerals Council of South Africa has taken the revised mining charter on judicial review. The primary reason for this is the charter's failure to recognize past empowerment deals for transfers of mining rights and for applications for new mining rights. But a further concern is the regulatory overreach by the minister in actually reviewing the charter in the first place. It has been argued that the minister has no authority under the MPRDA to revise the terms of the charter. Charter 3 now includes the provision that the minister has unlimited power to amend it at any time. That does nothing for policy certainty or investment attraction. The Department of Mineral Resources has dropped the ball on mineral rights administration and has finally admitted what everyone else could plainly see. The South African Mineral Resources Administration database, SAMRAD, is woefully inadequate. It is quite bizarre then that at least 22 countries with much more progressive mining regimes use South African technology to do the same job. Technology created right here in Cape Town, and yet our government refuses to consider it. Instead, they seek a customized solution that not only administers mining rights, but bolts on departmental human resources and financial administration, amongst a whole lot of other things. We can fix this problem quickly and cost effectively if we use existing resources instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. We need to acknowledge that South Africa is no longer attractive to mining investors. According to the Fraser Institute's Mining Investment Attractiveness Index, South Africa ranked 48th out of 91 jurisdictions in 2017, and in terms of mining policy, South Africa ranked 13 out of 15 African countries. So in fact, our policies are chasing investors away, and this is borne out by the disinvestment strategies of the larger players and the sharp decline in the number of new entrants and new mining operations. A recent report by Corruption Watch indicated that billions of rands worth of mining royalties have been squandered, stolen, or diverted. The royalties, which are collected by SARS, are placed in the National Revenue Fund, where they disappear into the black hole that is state capture and unadulterated government incompetence and mismanagement. These funds must be ring-fenced and independently administered and audited to ensure that they go to the communities they are intended to benefit. Now, a further concern in this regard relates to the role of traditional leaders in negotiating the royalty agreements and administering the funds at a local level, often in secret, without the community having any say in the matter. This is not fair and cannot be permitted to continue. And perhaps most importantly, Minister, it is time to rein in the unions. As a former mine worker and unionist, you will know...
Order, Chair. Order, Chair.
Honourable Milam, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
The member addresses the Honourable Minister with his finger. Is the parliamentary allowed to do so?
No, Honourable Member, it's fine. You may continue, Honourable Milam, but address the Chair. I can't ask him to withdraw the finger, you see. Continue, Honourable Member.
As a former mine worker and unionist, you will know that there must be a balance between organized labor and the employers/investors to ensure reasonable working conditions and wages for the workers on the one hand, and profitability and certainty for the shareholders on the other. The balance at present is seriously skewed towards the unions, with AMCU, as an example, demanding a starting salary of 17,500 rand per month in the platinum sector. This actively drives up the cost of production and encourages mining companies to take their investments elsewhere. And as a result, instead of creating jobs in the sector, we continue to shed them. By all means, let's fight for a reasonable wage, but let's also acknowledge that to create jobs, we need both employee and employer bodies to reach reasonable compromise. Unrealistic demands, unregulated and ill-disciplined strike action, and threats of violence and intimidation do nothing to further the cause of our mining sector or job creation. So let's take some bold decisions. Let's scrap the mining charter. Let's learn from Botswana, for example, which is widely regarded as having one of the most progressive mineral policy regimes in the world, one that creates jobs and encourages mining investment. Let's allow mining companies to focus on their core business, namely mining, rather than running clinics and bakeries and the like. Let's use royalties from mining companies to enable government to deliver services to the surrounding communities rather than placing that burden on mine owners. And let's do it in a transparent and accountable manner where the community has a say in what the royalties are used for. Let's put in place a modern online mining rights and mining cadastral system
Honourable
that will
Member,
speed up mining
your
rights
time is now
applications
expired.
and make it easier for new entrants to gain access to the sector. Minister, let's get South Africa's mines working again. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Makalipi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The EFF rejects these budget votes. In June 2013, the Mineral and Petroleum Development Amendment Bill was introduced in the National Assembly, and the bill introduced state ownership and sharing in profits of mineral and petroleum resources. Section 86 of the MPRDA bill that you were so quick to withdraw, Minister, and unconstitutionally, soon after you were appointed as a minister, was going to give the state 20% stake in all new exploration and production rights from the effective dates of such rights. The bill was never signed because we have a government that serves the interest of capital and French oil companies and undermine Parliament and does not respect the Constitution. You did not sign the MPRDA because it will have given the state and people of South Africa 20% ownership of the exploration rights to the Bralbara block south of Mosel Bay, which instead is going to benefit multinationals only. The amendments of the MPRDA was going to disrupt the status quo in the mining sector that has robbed South Africa of its mineral wealth and continue to kill mine workers. In fact, MPRDA bill will have allowed South Africa to allocate shares in mineral and petroleum resources as one of the many models South Africa need to explore to fund the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But you don't want the state to control the mineral and petroleum wealth that will lead to a process of rapid beneficiation of South Africa's mineral resources into finished product. Instead, you want to continue with the colonial practice of exporting raw material only to buy back finished products. And this is why you don't want to listen to the people of Xolobeni in the Eastern Cape, Minister. You go to Australia to receive instruction from Caruso. Your consultation meetings with the community are nothing but cover-up, Minister. You undermine the wishes of more than 200 households, their livelihood and right to land, and you ridicule ultimate sacrifices, men and women like Sikosipi Bazuka Khatebe, who was killed defending the right to choose economic path. The people of Xolobeni have a right to say no to mining, have a right to choose an economic path and developmental state that own and control strategic mineral resources will be at the forefront of exploring alternative economic development model instead of being controlled by narrow interest of foreign-owned capital, Minister. As the EFF, we will table a private member's bill to amend the MPRDA to ensure that quotas are introduced on the exportation that no more than 30% of raw mineral resources are exported, and that 70% or more of raw mineral resources are processed in finished industrial products within South Africa. Part of what the amendments of the MPRDA will ensure that manufacturing and processing of mineral resources prioritize the participation of black companies in mineral beneficiations. That's why it is important that we must renationalize ISCO. Let's maximally expand the capacity of African exploration mining and Finance Corporation as a state-owned mining company to reposition the state as a central player in the development, management, and use of South African wealth to create jobs. We should move toward a situation where a state-owned mining company operates all coal mines owned by Eskom to stabilize the state-owned company instead of some misguided restructuring efforts sponsored by Investec and the Rothschild to privatize a national strategic asset. Eskom is losing too much money and is paying premium price on the coal, which is owned through evergreen contracts with criminal syndicates. And an export supplies coal to generate revenue to fiscus and possible the sovereign wealth fund. We must discontinue private ownership of Sasol and Metal Steel and provide with concrete developmental mandates to contribute to the sustainable industrial development of South Africa. Minister, your former Deputy Minister Godfrey Oliphant went to Northern Cape to a much fanfare to grant mining permits to the small-scale miners that you and your government has criminalized as illegal miners. And you just said it now, here, Minister, but you must learn from your former Deputy Minister about this progressive move. But the people of Clense that you have criminalized, Minister, their efforts to livelihood are being shot at daily by police who collide with mining companies, and you are not even saying anything to protect those people. I wonder, why are we doing this as you claim that you are leading the COSATU and other formations such as SACP, but I do understand that there is no SACP anymore. It is the time to regulate and promote small-scale mining in Kimberley, Minister, Namakwaland Coast, Marikana, and other places like Emalahleni. This is the only way we'll ensure community and locally driven mining development. This is the only way we'll revitalize neglected mining towns, such as Velcom in Free State, or keep Podafa in Northern Cape, and transform locally driven mining development into mining-based manufacturing industries. And lastly, Minister, government must establish a database of all ex-mine workers or their close family members in the Eastern Cape, where you come from, by the way. KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Limpopo, and everywhere in the country, and ensure that each and every one of them gain access to their pension fund. There is too much money that belongs to workers sitting in pension funds, earning huge interest, ex-mine
Honorable
workers,
Member, your time is up.
and their families go through unimaginable poverty. Please, I will hand over my notes, Minister, in order for you not to run away from Kolobeni next time. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Honorable M.N. Ngumalo.
Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, honorable members. Across the world, there's a current redefining of the way in which electricity is both generated and distributed. In South Africa, we are still largely coal-dependent and debating on how best can we translate to a mixed system of using both coal, nuclear gas, and renewable energy sources. With the sphere of climate change looming globally, South Africa plays its role as a member not only of the Paris Climate Accord, but also as a leader in the continent. Emissions from our local coal-powered stations remains a real cause for the concern as Medupi and Kusile power plants, which both have a 75-year lifespan, are not yet fully functional. These coal-based stations and others like them in South Africa have the potential to thwart our attempts at climate change resilience, adaptation, and mitigation. Steps must be taken, therefore, to ensure a new energy mix, and more importantly, to ensure a move away from mega power plants towards smaller scale electricity, which meets the demands of local communities. This will not only ensure—
Point of order, House Chairperson.
Honorable Member, can you take a seat? What is your point of order?
The member is delivering a speech that is supposed to deliver tomorrow. Energy is tomorrow. Now we're speaking minerals. So can you speak to minerals? We'll speak to energy tomorrow.
Honorable Member, can you proceed, please?
Thank you very much, Speaker. This will not only ensure greater security and resilience of supply, but also ensure jobs and business is created at community level. Note must be taken that energy, although clean, is expensive, and nuclear plants will in its all likelihood overrun their budget, as well as prone to delays, and note must be taken that this government has consistently shown that it is unable to manage coal-fired electricity bills. How then do we refer with more expensive nuclear projects? Now, Honorable Minister, the solution lies in getting the South Africa energy mix right and in deploying greater budget to renewable energy. Besides, its renewable energy friendly climate change and geology, South Africa has the land expanse available in which to maximize its foray into this sector. What is required is the political will, Honorable Chairperson. The cost and technology of renewable energy is in respect of both physical and wind energy has dropped considerably, but provides any challenges in respect of storage.
Order, honorable
electricity
members,
generation.
can we allow the member to
An
debate,
energy
please?
mix at this stage is the preferred solution as we move away from fossil fuels towards more renewable and environmental friendly energy supply. In respect of gas, these energy stations are cheaper to build and to start and stop when compared to coal and nuclear, but precaution must be exercised in respect of environmental environmental impact with gas exploration and drilling in order to avoid possible collateral environmental disaster. Economic hurdles that continue to hinder South Africa from developing.
Honorable Chair.
What is your point of order?
Chair, can the member take a question?
Honorable member, are you ready to take a question?
The member can bring the question to in writing, not now.
He's not ready. Can you proceed?
Are you going to present the mineral one tomorrow at the energy?
Honorable member, order, please.
No, the member can bring the question in writing, then I will find time in my
Honorable
Chairperson,
I rise on a point of order.
Yes.
I think I also realize that the member might be talking about energy today and not mineral resources. It is maiden speech, but I don't think there's any need to ridicule. We all were new members at one time or the other. The same minister is going to be here tomorrow, and I will assure the minister that the member will read the correct speech tomorrow on energy. But I think for now, I think we should understand that we are new in this parliament, and some of those members who are still, I can give them a hanky to wipe the water behind the ears, should not ridicule this honorable member on the table. I would request my honorable member to take his seat for now, so that tomorrow he can continue with that speech on energy. Thank you.
Honorable member, you have got no right. You can't make a ruling. You are not the chair. I'm the one who can make a ruling. Can the honorable member present, since energy will be debated tomorrow? Proceed, and we are left with few minutes.
No, it's fine, Honorable Chairperson. I will take as per the Chief Whip. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Chair.
The next speaker is Honorable W.J. Bossoff.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, fellow members, and also members of the public, the Freedom Front fundamentally understands the need for transformation in ownership in the mining sector in South Africa. Because when our ancestors had to move to the urban areas of South Africa after the devastation of the Second Anglo-Boer War, we met a very hostile area dominated by British-aligned, empire-orientated mining houses. We found a hostile environment to which we had to respond in some way. And it was very soon that we realized that we had to respond by getting our part of the ownership. And to that end, Cook Sisters were sold, coin layings were held in many different modest ways. Ordinary people pooled their resources, their shillings and their pennies, to get a part of the mining sector of South Africa, and within a few decades, Federale Mynbou was part of the South African mining sector. Also, there was a namesake of mine, which is not family, Willie Boshoff, who started a mining empire by brushing off the dust from worked out mines into little bins and then beneficiating that to sellable gold. That's the first fully Afrikaans owned mining company in the South African history. It was done from the bottom up. We understand that it's necessary. We think there are ways and means to do it in a sustainable and a viable way. If we look at mynbou in South Africa, en ek gaan nou oorslaan na Afrikaans in die gees van dekolonisasie, dan kan ons sê Suid-Afrika is nie eintlik 'n land nie. Dit is 'n ryk en dit is 'n mynbou gesentreerde ryk. Dit is 'n ryk wat verskillende wêreldwye belange getrek het op grond van sy minerale rykdom. Daardie ryk van Suid-Afrika het van die Britse ryk oorgegaan na Afrikaner ryk, tans na ANC ryk. En elkeen van hierdie groepe wat die ryk van Suid-Afrika oorgeneem het, het die mynbou van Suid-Afrika gebruik om 'n spesifieke elite te bevorder. Vandag is niks anders nie. Ons het nie 'n neutrale stelsel wat vandag inkom nie. Ons het 'n nuwe elite wat homself deur die mynbou verryk. Ek dink ook dat dit belangrik is om in Suid-Afrika na twee verskillende soorte mynbou te verwys. Aan die een kant is daar die diepskag mynbou wat geweldig kapitaalintensief is en wat eintlik dit is waarvoor Suid-Afrika wêreldwyd bekend is. En dan is daar delwery wat deur gewone mense gedoen word wat eintlik amper soos 'n jagter-versamelaar ekonomie kan wees, waar mense doodgewoon waardevolle goed wat in hulle omgewing voorkom bymekaar maak, dit verkoop en dit vul hulle inkomste aan. Hierdie plaaslike groepe word in baie gevalle benadeel of deur regeringsbeleid, soos die Griekwas by Gongong naby Baklie Wes, wat sê dat daar nou ander mense is wat hulle voorvaderlike grond ontgin, dat hulle eintlik op 'n onregverdige manier daarvan weerhou word, en dan ook die gemeenskappe aan die Noord-Kaapse Weskus, wat in verskillende tye deur verskillende groepe, maar veral deur die kunsmatige skaarste wat geskep is deur die firma De Beers, aan bande gelê word in die aanvulling van hulle persoonlike en hulle huishoudelike inkomste. Nou die staat se rol in die mynbou is eintlik baie beperk, want mynbou is een van daai goed wat soveel geld genereer dat die privaat sektor sommer self die belegging doen. Dis nie soos wetenskap en tegnologie en hoër onderwys wat die staat moet instaan nie. Die probleem is natuurlik dat die staat verskillende belange moet beskerm. Byvoorbeeld die omgewing, die werkers, die hele res van die bevolking en kan ons sê ook toekomstige geslagte. Die probleem is dat dit ongelukkig nie baie doeltreffend gebeur nie. Ons mynwater is ernstig besoedel en wat ernstig, nie ernstiger is, nie eintlik minder ernstig, maar is verskriklik ernstig, is dat belegging in die mynbousektor ook nie meer gebeur nie.
Honorable member, your time is up. The next
I've got 40 more
seconds, yeah.
40 seconds is a lot to me. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Wat ek wil sê om jou af te sluit, is dat belegging in die mynbousektor word gekeer deur 'n beleid. Daardie beleid is swart ekonomiese bemagtiging. Dit behoort eintlik connected economic empowerment genoem te word. En dit word gekeer deur die mynbouhandves wat ons in Suid-Afrika het. In belang van al die mense van Suid-Afrika dring ek by die minister daarop aan dat ons die handves afskaf en dat ons mynbou toeganklik maak vir die gewone mense, sowel as vir die groot korporasies wat beleggings wil doen in belang van die hele land. Baie dankie.
Dankie. The next speaker on the list is the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy.
Before you start, I need to. Yeah. Honorable Chairperson, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Mr. Samson Gwedemantashe, the Chairperson and the members of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy, honorable members, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Chairperson, it is an honor to address this House on this budget vote as a Deputy Minister responsible for mineral resources and energy. This happens during the month of July, which is the month where the former president of South Africa, Comrade Nelson Mandela was born. And it also happens today on the 10th of July, which is the birthday of Comrade Solomon Makalushka Mahlangu. Amongst these two, they share a struggle for liberation for our people. And amongst those struggles, it includes the access to mineral resources, both economically and as a source of job creation. The House has been taken through the 7 priorities by the Minister, and 5 of those priorities are priorities that speak directly to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. As it has been said, there's 2 budget votes, and today we are focusing on the mineral resources. For us, Honorable Chairperson, to be the leading mining hub in the country and in the world, we will need to do extraordinary activities, and amongst those, we will need to turn around our licensing system and employ technology to assist us. This will need us to ensure that we get a better turnaround value, and we also get a bit of fast tracking on our licensing system. 2, we'll also need to do a bit of more explorations and ensuring that there's no mineral that we leave unmined. But when we do that, we must make sure that all stakeholders are aligned. We'll also need to make sure, as this department, that mine health and safety is at a better level, and that we are committed, all of us together with private sector and workers, to send our workers home alive. And also we'll need to ensure that there's intensification of mining of some of the metals that are not the famous ones, like your gold, your platinum, but look at the other ones that have not necessarily been the most famous ones. Amongst those, you will include your shale, your vanadium, your cobalt, your titanium, and many others. We, as this particular department, were listening very well when the president of the country cited mining during his State of the Nation address as one of the areas that has a potential for growth and for job creation. You will know that South Africa has been formalized mining, at least for the past 120 years, mining about 50 different commodities. Now, with all those being the issues, there's still a potential for people to want to invest in the mining in this particular country and also create jobs. But in contrast to all this, Honorable Chair, there's been news and outcomes that shows that the gold mining has been going down itself. And obviously, because it has been mined for so long, and mining in its nature is about depletion. Once you start mining, the amount and the value that you will have had underground depletes. Now, with that being said, yes, there are jobs that are declining at the level of gold mining, but the other areas in the industry are growing, and that's important. And amongst other areas that we will be looking at, one of the things that we must alert the Parliament of, Chair, is that we are going to continue to mine coal. We will explore and we will mine coal. We understand that between that, we'll then need to balance the use of coal as a source of energy with safety and cleanliness of coal. There are technologies that are available to ensure that coal can be cleaned up and be used as a source of energy. We will also have to explore the gas, including the very unfamous shale gas. Yes, this will need us to work together with the Department of Environmental Affairs, and we are going to do that to ensure that it's used as a source of energy itself, but also, as we will all know, it is also used as a feedstock for producing cleaner petroleum products. There will also be a focus as well into ensuring that minerals like titanium, which is used for aerospace industry because of its lightness and strength, is further focused on. The International Seabed Authority is doing quite a lot of work in the West Coast side in terms of mining of manganese with the deposits that are there. and manganese will be used as a catalyst, a rubber additive and discolorant and a fertilizer. And in South Africa, we are intending to increase our share in that particular mining from 1% to about 5%. We also going to ensure that in all these exercises, those who were previously marginalized are able to participate and be part and parcel of the mining. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to pass through the famous mining charter, which I have realized that is a center of dispute in this particular August House. But Chair, if we were to mine and do not have a policy position to ensure the inclusion of blacks and all previously marginalized groups, we will then be doing a useless exercise, because it means we'll be cutting and pasting from the apartheid system. Yes, 30% black ownership is demanded by the mining charter, and we want to see to it at the level of monitoring from the licensing to implementation that it happens. But Chair, we must also indicate that it has also started speaking to the issue of involvement of women in the ownership. However, there's still a gap. And the gap is that there's no mentioning of young people in the mining charter itself in terms of ownership. It speaks only on procurement. And because of that, at some point soon, a discussion to actually review that mining charter will be very relevant. We wish to bring to the attention of this particular House our proactive engagements that we are planning to have with different communities with regards to mining. We understand that as part of the licensing, that our communities must agree and be aligned in terms of what is it that must happen. So we'll intend to educate them about mining, the value add, and to assist them to determine or to reach conclusions on whether they want to continue with mining or not. We will be inviting all those who are interested, Chair, to go with us to a club and discuss with that particular community and bring two cases, because there are two cases that are there. The case of tourism as a sector that has a potential, and the case of mining of the titanium oxide that is in the shores of that particular area. Now, the communities need to be given all necessary information for them to make a determination whether they want to continue to mine or they want to rework both the industries at the same time. Chair, there are other areas in the area of licensing as well, like the issue of harding, where people in that area believe they have gold, but the scientific studies are showing that it's not gold. The engagements with those communities will also need to improve to ensure that our people have an understanding of what is going on. So is the case with the case of the Karoo. As indicated by the Minister earlier, we'll be paying
Honorable
more
member,
attention.
Order, please. Honorable member, order. Can you allow the Deputy Minister to table a speech, please?
We'll be paying attention to engagements with communities across the country, because their input is crucial for the growth and the transformation of the sector itself through our licensing. Chair, the discussions around social labor plans is one of the biggest discussions within the department, because our feeling is that when we look at them, there needs to be an improvement on the quality, but also an improvement on implementation and the monitoring and evaluation thereof. So we will be working very hard to make sure that that exercise is attended to. The discussion on beneficiation, the Minister has well covered it, but we take into recognition, Chair, that a need to relook at the structuring of the electricity price and other utilities is going to be very central in attracting investors to ensure that this particular exercise is done much better and there's more activities. Chair, allow me to venture a bit on youth-related matters within this particular industry. We need to strike a balance, Chairperson, between the knowledge of the old guard and the innovation of young people in the sector, particularly to ensure that there's advancement and there's transformation. The young people in this particular country can assist us as the country to put ourselves on the sustainable growth path by supporting industrialization, through involvement of young people. The fourth industrial revolution will always be very difficult for old guard to actually comprehend, but the young people bring that ability and agility to be able to actually bring the advanced technology into the industry. And it will remain then important to then not only involve young people just on procurement as per the mining charge, but also to involve young people through ownership. Since the mining charter is silent, Chair, what we are encouraging young people to do is to form part of the community groupings and BEE entrepreneurs that are approaching the department to be part and parcel of the exercise of licensing. Honorable Chair, the youth, women, and people with disabilities need to find expression in this sector, particularly people with disabilities. It's very rare to find some of them some participating in this industry. Simple because some of the industry, well, within this particular industry, there's restrictions of safety, and there's not been an effort put forward to ensure that the places of work are made accessible for those people. Chair, the women in this particular sector, if you may allow me to venture a bit back into history, have been excluded, both by law and legislation. Yes, the introduction of the mining charter has tried to include women in terms of the workforce, but we must also say that the amount of women, particularly young women who are actually participating on ownership, still remains very low. Chair, the issue of liability that we had to take over as the country in terms of ownerless and derelict mines is huge. It's sitting at about 49 billion. And this cultivates environment for illegal mining and many other unsafe activities within the openings that used to be mines. Chair, there's a difference between illegal mining and small-scale mining. One, when a person comes and mines without a license, it's illegal and they must be treated as criminals. Now, two, when you're done with that process, we are opening the licensing of small scale mining to ensure that people are able to mine, but we are not going to encourage that people come and mine illegal. In fact, we will ensure that the SAPS is part and parcel of that particular exercise. Now, Chair, there's an issue of ex-miners. There's an issue of ex-miners and current miners that have been suffering from tuberculosis and silicosis due to the gold mining. There's a project already that we are working on with the Department of Health to ensure that those people are properly compensated. And we can assure this August House Chair that will ensure that they are fast-tracked and that process is smooth. We'll take it into our own hands to make sure that is the important issue that is happening. Mining, Chair, remains a contested terrain in the country, and between blacks and whites, the haves and the haves not, it is clear that when you try and introduce any form of transformation agenda, you will always be met with resistance. But the department chairperson is ready to transform this industry. We will work with those who are willing to work with us. And Chair, allow me to thank, as I conclude, the department, which is the team DMRE, the minister, the committee that has been supporting us in the past 5 weeks as we were putting together most of the work and planning for the year ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. The next speaker is Honorable V. Zungula.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Minister, as well as Deputy Minister and all members of the House. Minerals in the country should be owned by South Africans. We cannot live in a country whereby our precious metals are largely owned by foreign companies. Now, it cannot be that 25 years after the dawn of democracy, you find that most of the companies that are owning the mines are foreign. Now, we need political will from the side of government to transfer the ownership of these mines to South African companies, if not the state. We must also work on ensuring that the areas where Zamazamas work are safe, because Zamazamas, it is ordinary South African citizens who are struggling to make ends meet. Now, it is natural for them to try and find means of making a living for themselves. Therefore, it is the duty of government to provide safety in those communities as well as the miners. Also, the issue of beneficiation and processing of the minerals must be prioritized. We cannot accept that the energy issues are a stumbling block, because we find that most of our energy, or some of our energy, is supplied to neighboring countries. And when investors want to come and invest in the country, energy is not an issue. Therefore, we cannot use energy as an issue now when it comes to the beneficiation of our minerals. We must have a concrete plan that is drawn up and publicized, because the issue of beneficiation will create jobs and ensure that we do business with the world from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness, because we are the owners of these minerals. It cannot be that we take these minerals as raw as they are to the likes of Korea and Japan, and they come back to us and they dictate how much we should buy the cars as well as the phones that they give to us. All of the companies must have tangible plans to beneficiate, and the companies that do not have, and the mining companies that do not produce these plans must pay more taxes and levies. We must find these companies that do not want to put the interest of South Africa first. We must also make sure that the government makes it part of the license conditions for the mining companies to invest in scarce skills. We cannot have a mining industry in the country which is largely dependent on foreign skills. We must invest in exploration, computer modeling, mineral processing in order to capacitate our young people so that the economy of the country is largely dependent on South Africans. Also, we must deal harshly with syndicates operating in illegal mining. Let's not target the Zamazamas, whereas there is illegal syndicates that are operating in the background. Lastly,
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
Lastly, government must be proactive with mine safety. We must have a culture of people first and profit second. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Wolmerans.
Baie goed, Honorable House Chairperson, Chairperson of the committee members, Minister of Mineral and Energy and the Deputy Minister, the DGs and the team from the department, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. The Minister often describes mining with the 4 Ds. He says it is difficult, it is dangerous, it is dirty, and it is diseased. However, the 4 Ds do not have to represent all what mining is about. In fact, government's approach to the sector is that if managed well, within the legislative framework we have, mining can be seen as for its potential to contribute to the economic and social well-being of the South Africans and the environment. If we consider some facts about the sector, according to statistics, the sector contributed as follows during 2017-18. 307 billion in exports, representing 27% of the country's 1.1 trillion total. There was production that rose to 630 billion, which translated to 7.4% of 8.6 trillion South African production. In spite of the job losses recorded, there was 7,000 jobs, which went up to 464,667 in 2017. In other words, mining contributed plus minus 4.6 of the private sector and the non-agricultural employment growth. So the positions that we normally take as South Africans when we discuss mining tends to be polarized. But we need to take a step back, and instead of demonizing the sector, we have to look at it objectively in terms of its good, its bad, its ugly sides. And I would argue that government, particularly the Department of Minerals and Energy, needs to lead this debate in our society. In his inaugural State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa urged South Africans to begin to see mining as a sunrise industry. Any country, for that matter, that is sitting on top of an estimated 2.3 trillion US dollars worth of mineral wealth, as South Africa is, would have a serious national dialogue about how we can exploit this wealth to develop our country to the benefit of all. So the vision of the Department of Mineral Resources sets the goal of building a globally competitive, sustainable, and meaningfully transformed mining and mineral sector. And this is in line with the vision of the 2030 National Development Plan. However, there are real problems in the mining industry that must be tackled. Job losses are among the most depressing news that we hear often. It is depressing because we know that as mining operations slows down or adopt mechanization methods, the most vulnerable, unskilled, and semi-skilled workers lose their jobs by the thousands. We believe that industry must be held accountable for the commitments that business made at the Presidential Job Summit held in October last year. Business representatives, including the mining sector, agreed that they will do everything possible to avoid retrenchments, recognizing that there are routes back to health for struggling companies and mines which do not require retrenchment of workers. The African National Congress seeks a path to sustainable development of our minerals and related industries. This means conditions must be imposed on mining license holders that limit what they can and what they cannot do. In this regard, the three departments that issue licenses, Minerals, Resources, Water and Sanitation, Environmental Affairs, must work closely together to ensure that license conditions pertaining to their mandates are complied with. It's a compliance issue. This should be done in line with the commitment made by the President in his State of the Nation address earlier this year that government departments will reduce the tendency to work in silos. By strengthening their cooperation, we believe that loopholes that are being exploited by unscrupulous operators who place workers, mining communities, and the environment at risk will be closed effectively. Honorable Chairperson, as the ANC, we support the budget vote. Our support recognizes that the department has a huge mandate, but limited resources. We acknowledge the steady increase in allocation. However, the allocation of just 2 billion falls short of what the departments need in order to fulfill its mandate in terms of the MPRDA. These situations requires creativity on the part of the department. The developmental state paradigm, as understood by the ANC, does not conceive the state as an overbearing giant carrying a big stick to beat the players into compliance. The developmental state is one that is capable, clean, professional. It is embedded in networks with social partners, but at the same time, it is autonomous. Embeddedness of the state means that communities and the organized working class have to be empowered to partner effectively with the department to ensure that there is compliance with legislation pertaining to their health and safety, and environmental laws and labor laws in our country. This budget vote is informed by the 54th National Conference resolution of the ANC and our election manifesto. We have committed to transform the mining industry by focusing on beneficiation, which has been mentioned several times, including the minister. Research and development capabilities, as well as manufacturing, will be developed through beneficiations. We would like to see the iron ore and steel beneficiation value chain rejuvenated and industrialization through government support to enterprises, particularly SMMEs, cooperatives owned by women, youth, and previously disadvantaged people. For that reason, the ANC supports this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, Minister, Deputy Ministers, Honourable members in the House and our guests in the gallery. The National Freedom Party welcomes the report of the Department of Mineral Resources tabled here today. Now, Minister, I have a question for you. let's assume, Minister, that all the mineral wealth in this country belong to you and your family. Let's just assume it all belongs to you and your family. Then will you allow the international community or the foreign monopoly capitalist to take all the benefits of it and give you the crumbs? Because that is what is happening in South Africa and in the African continent, the wealthiest continent in terms of minerals, but the poorest in the world. So the question is, when are we going to look after our own interests before we have the interest of the international community? Now, the mineral wealth that we have here is sold at a pittance to the international community, polished and come back here, and then we are paying what, 500 times, 1 million times the price of it? That's exactly what is happening. Now, let us also be honest about something else. Mining in South Africa does not come cheap. If you look at the health risks to our people, you know about tuberculosis, you know the challenges of HIV. You've admitted, Minister, that beneficiation is only a dream. So when are we going to change this so that it benefits the people on the ground? We spoke about radical economic transformation. We want to transform this economy to benefit South Africans. And when we have people here talking about investment, they are correct. People don't want to invest. You know why they don't want to invest? Because those are the people that want to take everything and give you the crumbs. They don't want it to be a win-win situation so that we benefit and they benefit. They want to benefit at the expense of the blood, sweat, and tears of the people in South Africa. And we cannot allow that. Now, another matter that I want to bring to the attention of the department is, many of these miners have come from different countries, particularly in the SADC region. And my understanding is this, that many of them have even died in South Africa, and they have not received their benefits, or you could not trace their families. I'd like to know, what are we doing about that? Because my understanding is there's a lot of money is available in that fund, and we were not able to trace these beneficiaries. And I think it is important we need to address that. Now, I think what is very important for us is to accept that it cannot be business as usual while others make the money and earn the profits while our people suffer the consequences. I think the time has come where we need to ensure that mining in South Africa and the
remember,
African
your time
continent
has expired.
benefits our people. So we need a change in the way we do our business. The National Freedom Party will support this report table here today. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is the Honorable V. Malinga. I think she will be delivering a maiden speech.
Honorable House Chairperson, Minister, the Deputy Ministers in the House, Members of Parliament, guests in the gallery, officials of the department. I am humbled by the opportunity to participate in this important debate. Today, Chairperson, marks 3.5 years since the Lily Mine tragedy, in which two women and 1 male mine workers were trapped underground. The container in which Preaching Kambule, Yvonne Mnisi, and Solomon Nyirende got trapped, sucked to the bowels of the earth, never to be found again. The recovery efforts of the 3 mine workers were stalled when mine officials said the operation were deemed unsafe for the rescue teams. This incident is extremely painful, particularly to those of us from Mpumalanga province where it took place. It is hurtful when we consider that the families of these workers still do not have closure, equally the children who will never see their mothers and fathers alive again. Difficult and painful as it is, it does indicate how the ANC government is doing to transform the mining sector. Mining has been known for centuries as a male-dominated industry. Our fathers and brothers left their families in the former homelands and neighboring countries to work as cheap labor on the coal, diamond, and gold mines. Up until the 1990s, the legislation in South Africa meant that women were not permitted to work underground. This changed the South African Mining Charter. This changed when the South African Mining Charter was introduced, charter introduced quoting, urging mining companies to employ a 10% female staff complement. Today, roughly 17% of the mining industry globally comprises female employees. As at the end of 2018, there were about 53,000 women out of a total workforce of about 460,000 in the mining industry in our country. This means women representation is at about 11%. About 22% of these women are employed in platinum and gold mines where they have to go deep underground with their male colleagues. The mining sector is not without its challenges, especially for women miners. Reports of sexual assault, harassment are quite prevalent, disturbing, as reported in the news when the nearly 300 miners went under strike underground. The case in point is that of Pinky Mosiane, who was murdered 6 years ago at Anglo Platinum Komani Mine, Cynthia Setule, who was fatally attacked last year at Aquarius Platinum, which is Kwezi Shaft. These incidents led to the formation of Women in Mining and in Rustenburg Tripartite Forum to encourage women to speak out against women abuse and harassment in mines. That being said, we call on the mining industry and the department to take decisive action to ensure the safety of women in South African mines. These measures must include better access to toilets and changing facilities. Equipment, including protective clothing, must be custom-made for women. Several women for participating and competing in the mining industry while raising children. We also would like to appeal to our society to accept that raising a family should be a shared duty between the genders. Honorable Chairperson, since the ANC came into government 25 years ago, we have seen the opening of opportunities for women to participate in the industry, both as workers and business people having ownership, stakes in mining operations. However, more still needs to be done to transform the sector. We pay tribute to women such as Bohoni Matla, who was featured in the Women in Mining Business feature this month. As the department says in this budget vote, transformation of the mining sector is not only a political necessity, but a business imperative. By involving women in mining, there are obvious benefits that research has shown, which include, amongst others, but not limited to the following. Mines can show social responsibility. Women's employment on mines will bring positive benefits to the entire community. Women on mines will contribute on social normalization. Women will play a role in reducing poverty. Entrepreneurship is promoted, and the generational wealth gap, which tends to be racially defined in South Africa, can be reduced. As the ANC, we would like to call on the department to play a greater role as the regulator to monitor the transformation of the sector in line with the MPRDA and the mining charter. We would like to receive the regular reports during our 5-year term in Parliament, showing greater inclusion of women, youth, and persons living with disabilities in this strategic sector of the economy. We are encouraged by the commitment of the department under Program 3, Mineral Regulation, to strengthen the branch so that it has the capacity to monitor the empowerment of historically disadvantaged South Africans, especially youth, women, and people living with disabilities. The branch structure has been reassessed to optimally deal with challenges emanating from outcomes of compliance, monitoring, and evaluation inspections.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
The ANC accepts the budget vote, Minister. Honourable Chair, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Chonso.
Chairperson, as the PAC, we remain convinced that all the riches of this country must be in the hands of a responsible government. for the benefit of the well-being and development of the dispossessed masses. With the profits we make from our riches, we will afford free education, free quality healthcare, proper housing, and generally eradicate the inhuman living conditions our people find themselves in. The government keeps issuing our mining licenses to foreign companies that continue to exploit our people. And when these licenses expire, they corrupt our desperate masses to participate in illegal mining. Our people in Kolobeni continue raising their plight to the government, and the government keeps acting confused with what happened or what ought to be done. Key to the land debate is the ownership and control of the mineral wealth. And until our government has the will to repossess the dispossessed land, our land was taken through the barrel of a gun. Take it at least through the Act of Parliament. For now, the PAC of Azania reject this budget.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Phillips. This is the maiden speech. We want the whips to inform us before we call the members, so that they can be at ease. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you. Chair, my fellow South Africans, much has been said about President Ramaphosa's dream. It can be compared to one of Don Quixote's songs in Man of La Mancha: to dream the impossible dream, to fight the impossible fight, to right the impossible wrong. Unfortunately, when the play ends, so does the dream, just like our State of the Nation address. Most of the challenges that our mining industry faces are well documented in the committee's draft report. From our expensive and unreliable electricity supply to copper cable theft that has affected effective functioning of our rail system, especially the ability of mines to transport their product to the market. These criminal acts mentioned in the report are all issues that should have been addressed by the government years ago. But instead of getting them under control, the ANC-led government has allowed them to flourish. Illegal miners are a health, safety, environmental, and economic threat to our country, and a threat to investment. Companies that spend millions of rand to adhere to mining legal requirements are forced to compete on the open market with goods mined illegally at a much, much lower cost. Let me be clear, though. It is the failure of this government to create jobs that has led unemployed people to put their lives on the line by engaging in illegal mining. It is the failure of this government to secure our borders and keep illegal immigrants out that has contributed to the illegal activities in the illegal mining. Other countries like Rwanda and Venezuela have both introduced very successful programs to bring the Zamazamas into the formal mining sector. And what's more, these pilot programs were actually run by a South African. Why is there no plan in South Africa for us to do the same? We cannot sit in a committee meeting and be told there is research to back up a positive mining environment, when the increasing unemployment figures, decreasing revenue from mining, and decreasing investment in the committee's very own report tells a different story. If our high-priced and unreliable energy supply is a negative factor in the growth of the mining industry, then it is time that we allow the mining industry to negotiate directly with small, independent power producers to provide the power to the mining industry. The Minister of Minerals and Energy now also wants to make mining companies even more uncompetitive by suggesting that they take over the health care of people who are not employed by the mines but live in the vicinity of the mines. If there are no hospitals in rural areas, my question to government is, why not? How can you even consider implementing a compulsory national health care if you don't have hospitals in rural areas? The second purpose of Vote 29 is to ensure that all South Africans derive sustainable benefits from the country's mineral wealth. If you visit some of the indigenous communities who live where mines have been built, it becomes patently obvious that in most cases, The funds from the contractual royalties are only benefiting a few connected individuals, if anyone at all. What has happened to the contractual royalties that have been paid into development funds for these communities? Have they actually been paid by the relevant mining companies as required by law? Many of the communities affected by the mining in the area were opposed to clauses in the new mining charter that limit the power of communities when determining how the benefits and the development in the industry will be carried out. The development funds, or D funds, as the contractual royalties are referred to, are in reality controlled by the Premier and nominated officials from the province. As an example, in the case of the Bakwena Bamahopa people, this has resulted in an alleged amount of 350 million rand being spent that has not benefited the community. In addition to the almost non-existent record keeping and accountability of money spent, provincial officials appear also to be able to invest money in short-term investments. Here, VBS Bank comes to mind, without consulting the community that should be benefiting from this money. The lack of benefit to the local communities from the D Fund, the division that it has sown, and the lack of transparency and accountability, as well as the alleged corruption, indicates that the issue of contractual royalties is one that needs to be investigated urgently, and an alternative way of empowering the local
Honourable
communities.
Member, your time is now expired.
When the mining industry has once again become the powerhouse of South Africa, we will be able to say that not
Honourable
only have
Member,
we
your
dreamt the
time has
impossible
expired.
dream, but that we have followed the impossible star.
The next speaker is the Honourable Mahlaule.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, we want to first start by acknowledging that in South Africa in general, we have had policy implementation challenges. We even note that it is because of the growing appetite and tendency to agonize and fight over detail rather than focusing on taking the necessary pragmatic steps required to realize the essence of our laws and policies. At all times, we need to guard against degenerating in our debates to levels where we differ for the sake of differing. In actual fact, we should find common ground that will assist us all to move our country forward. But of course, there are parties such as the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, which we can never ideologically be aligned with. Because these parties that are only concerned with maintaining the status quo, that is, the accumulation of the lion's share of income and assets by one group. That's what they represent. To them, it does not matter that such trajectory perpetuate the exclusion of the majority of South Africans, most of whom are blacks and Africans. In fact, the DA does a very good job in hoodwinking many South Africans. A browse through the DA policy on mining is such an agonizing exercise. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Most astonishing was stumbling upon a paragraph in a paper the DA published in 2017 titled, DA's approach to mining empowerment will focus on jobs, growth, mine workers, and mining communities. But it reads as follows. The DA, and I quote, believes the greatest contribution mines can make to the country is employing the greatest number of poor South Africans possible. The DA rejects outright the idea of a state mining company. As for what they call a foolish notion of nationalizing the mining industry, they say the lunacy would quickly sink South Africa to a failed state. How the DA was able to go in a non-coalition with the EFF when they reject everything that the EFF stands for is truly inexplicable. In its 2019 election manifesto, the EFF promised that it would nationalize all mines by 2023 if elected in the polls. We all know by now that wishes can never be horses. When one considers EFF policy statements against monopoly capital and against white people in general, it is indeed dumbfounding how these self-proclaimed Sankarists arrived at a decision to vote for the DA. How does a left-leaning organization assist proud neoliberalists to control a number of municipalities, including 3 big metros? Whenever there is a mismatch between professed ideology and actions,
Honourable Member at the
it is
podium.
evident.
Honourable Member, will you just take a seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
On a point of order, Chair.
Yes, what's the point of order?
Can I remind that member that in Canaland you went with DA in coalition
No,
then?
that's not the
Maybe you were
point-
not the
that's
ANC
not the
member at
point
the
of
time.
order, Honourable
You were
Member.
still a marshal in your branch.
Honourable
Stop
Member,
grandstanding here.
That is not a point of order. Continue, Honourable Member.
Whenever there is a mismatch between professed ideology and action, it is evident that serious internal contradictions reign supreme. Those contradictions have been managed inside the EFF through a dose of self-delusion. The so-called commissars and commanders persist lying to the public at large that they are not in a formal coalition with the DA. Honorable James Sell from this side, Honorable James Sell from this side publicly declared for all to note that it was these commissars and commanders who approached the DA to ask for their neoliberal hand in marriage, which we now know it has been turned down. Today, we again caution the Red Berets that there is no way you can find common ground with the DA and the Freedom Front Plus. You must know that for the masters, you will remain good for bringing food to the table and not for sitting on the table. Vuka muntu omnyama. We must not differ for the sake of differing. However, it does not follow that revolutionaries must sacrifice evidence at the altar of principle. As the African National Congress, we will never cut our nose just to spite your own face. The DA's manifesto section on mining must actually be commended for being more streetwise than they have been given credit for so far. Truth is, the Denialist Alliance's manifesto absolutely have no policy proposal at all, unless some in this House want to argue that the few lines that we picked up when we were reading their manifesto, calling for ensuring close regulation and protect ecosystem, our natural heritage, and surrounding communities is a policy. This is clever because nobody can claim to know what the DA officially wants to do in this important sector of our economy. This frees them. It frees them of policy responsibilities moving forward. Actually, the DA's unwritten policy is to represent the best of their abilities in the interest of the mining capitals. Their strategy is to leave an open door for nefarious anti-transformation monopolies to rally its forces to continue an exclusion of the vast majority of our people for sharing in this lucrative sector. The ANC-led government has a responsibility to deepen democracy and ensure that the mineral wealth beneath the soil benefits all South Africans. It is for this reason that our government persuaded all the stakeholders in mining to negotiate the current mining charter. We will be the first ones, obviously, to concede that the mining charter is by no means perfect. In fact, it is a consensus document that sought to unite those who have an interest in the sector. The DA's comment about the charter was that it has too many requirements for affirmative action, appointments to be demographically representative, and for procurement to be restrictively local. This comes as no surprise coming from the party infamous of its selective conservatism in relation to transformation and sharing the wealth of this country. Comrade Sheikh Imam said, you want to eat alone. In simple language, the DA opposes the charter because it will bring about too much transformation of the mining sector. On the other hand, the EFF slammed the same charter for its supposed lack of transformation. These two extremes in criticism are based on the fundamental weaknesses of both parties, that they are far removed from reality. The reality is that the structure and character of the South African economy must be transformed in order for us to live together as one nation, united in diversity. However, for fundamental transformation to happen, we need to shift both the global and domestic balance of forces in favor of progress and inclusiveness. This requires painstaking work that will unite the motive forces that are progressive. None of these tasks are easy. Hence, South Africans felt it proper to entrust the ANC with the responsibility to forge ahead with the task on the 8th of May 2019. These tasks become even more difficult when a political formation with potentially progressive policies abandons its ideological and class consciousness. When the party like the EFF decides to offer the votes of the masses, the votes of black working class, the hopes of the poor to sometimes conservative and other times neoliberalist party like the DA, transformation is postponed. It is actually deterred to an infinite future. Dare I remind you, economic freedom in our lifetime is the essence of the 24th elective Congress of the ANC Youth League. These are resolutions. These are our resolutions. Don't you dare bastardize and taint them by playing with pigs, because the pigsty stink will stick with you forever. When the children,
Honourable Member, will you just take a seat, please? What's your point of order, Honourable Member?
Chairperson, in accordance with Rule 68, what's the relevance of referring to us as pigs here? I'm deeply offended by
Sit down. No. Honourable Member.
And also his line of argument.
Honourable
How
Member,
relevant is it?
that is not the point of order.
How relevant is it to energy? He's speaking about the ideology of the EFF.
Honourable Member, that is a point for debate that you can take up with the Honourable Member. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Chair. In conclusion, when the children, in fact, our siblings there in Red Berets, of our icon Mama Winnie Mandela, decide to hop happily into bed with the party of J.B. Hertog and Hendrik Verwoerd, our revolution is deferred by many decades, not even a generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Order, Honourable Members.
It's my maiden speech. Yes. One of the things I've learned, Honorable Chairperson, is that one of these days responsibility you have is to howl when you have no responsibility to make things work, despite being invited to make a positive contribution. That is wasted time by many in the opposition. Now, tomorrow we'll be tabling a debate on energy, which will explain in detail the separation of mining and petroleum. Secondly, the DA has obsession about labor costs, not based on comparative studies. You have not compared wages of mine workers in South Africa and in Australia. You are just saying it's high cost because you think so. Please do a research. I did it. I did it. You must go and read it. You have not done it. Number two, the question of gold. You talk of gold, Ghana having overtaken us without doing an analysis of the nature of the geological configuration of the two countries and the time of mining in South Africa compared to Ghana. Therefore, you are doing what is called the effect of recency. Now, and I must say, we're talking to the Mineral Council.
Honourable Minister, will you just take your seat, please?
House
Why are you
Chair.
rising, Honourable Member?
Will the Honourable Minister take a question?
Are you prepared to take a question, Honourable Minister?
No, take it, let him sit down.
Are you prepared to take a question, Honourable Minister?
We're not in a debating society.
Yes, the Minister won't take a
Must-
question.
We actually are.
Please
We're
take
in a
your-
House of Parliament, which
Please
is a
take
debate.
your seat.
Yeah.
Continue, Honourable Minister.
Now, as we engage with the Mineral Council on an ongoing basis, we're making progress, actually, about what should happen in the industry. And the DA sometimes keep this negative narrative about the industry and pretend to be representing even the employers in the industry. And you don't represent them. They speak for themselves to us. Now, for example, you refer to the Fraser Institute and ignore to acknowledge that after we gazetted the charter last year, we jumped 25 spots in our rankings internationally on policy and regulatory certainty, and 5 spots on investment attractiveness. You ignore that, it's a deliberate act on your part. The question of electricity price and the debate on administered prices will continue driving that, because we think that at the heart of administered prices, we can actually trigger growth in mining industry and manufacturing. The history of Afrikaners and mining, please don't distort for us. We're growing in this country. We know that union cooperation and general mining was an act of generosity. It was equal to employment equity to BE today. It was driven by the principle of live and let live. And it was sustained, the success of Afrikaners was sustained by reservation of jobs for scheduled persons. So don't come and distort the history of Afrikaners and mining here, because you are distorting it. Now, the question of digitization and licensing, we have allocated 20 million for that project as a department. We'll work on that. The day is obsessed that we must come and get a license in Cape Town. I'm beginning to be suspicious. I was taking it serious first. I'm beginning to be suspicious that DA has a share in that company. So I'm very nervous about it. When you raise it for the first time, I took you serious, but I think you have a share there. Now, no, yes, fine. Yes, fine. Now, we will continue providing information on mine health and safety regularly in this house, because it is important for people to work in a safe place. When there are improvements, they must be recorded, we must acknowledge them, but work towards attainment of no fatality in the mining industry. Every fatality is one too many. I want to thank the players in the industry who have honored this budget vote. I want to thank all of you to be here. We'll take your ideas. If you put them negative, we'll convert them into a positive input and use it if it will help. And we thank everybody who is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, you are reminded that the following debates will take place at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The debate on tourism budget vote will take place here in the National Assembly. The debate on cooperative governance and traditional affairs will take place in the Old Assembly. And the debate on home affairs will take place also at 2 o'clock in Committee Room E249. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary. The mini plenary will now rise.
I will bring the water now.